Hello all, and welcome back to another marvelous video. If you call yourself a true fan of the Maestro of Horror, then today's video is certainly going to be a treat. Of course, some people out there prefer not to address Nikolai Arcel's 2017 neo-western sci-fi fantasy film as a direct adaptation of Stephen King's 8-novel series titled The Dark Tower, and that's absolutely okay. After all, the movie deliberately chose to serve itself as a sequel, one that loosely adapted some of the characters and events from its source material. Well now, with Mike Flanagan having acquired the rights to develop a TV series based on the books and his Dark Tower show currently in development, we think it's a great time to check out Arcel's The Dark Tower. We encourage you to watch this video through to the end, as we're going to take a look at 20 fascinating facts about the 2017 flick that might surprise even the most diehard of fans. Before we get into this list though, we do have one very small request. If you like our content, then please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Are you ready? Without further ado, let's dive into 20 insane facts about 2017's The Dark Tower.
This is why you're here. This is your destiny.
You killed my mom!
Idris Elba was not the first choice for the role of gunslinger Roland Deschain. Surprised? Well, prepare to be even more so when we tell you who else was considered for the lead role before Idris Elba was cast. The list includes names like Viggo Mortensen, Russell Crowe, Mads Mikkelsen, Daniel Craig, Javier Bardem, and Christian Bale. Casting of Idris Elba caused a great deal of controversy among fans. Idris Elba's casting as gunslinger Roland Deschain in The Dark Tower created significant controversy among a vocal portion of the book series' fan base. The controversy stemmed from a fundamental difference between the character's description in King's novels and his on-screen portrayal. In the books, Roland is pretty explicitly described as being white with a physical appearance often likened to an aged Clint Eastwood. Naturally, for many die-hard fans who had spent decades picturing this specific version of the character, the casting of a black actor was seen as a major betrayal to the source material. That being said, there were also many who supported the casting, arguing that Idris Elba's talent and stoic presence were far more important than his skin color. They believed he was the ideal actor to capture Roland's world-weary and determined spirit. King also weighed in on the controversy, publicly supporting Elba and urging fans to accept the casting. The author did state that the color of the actor's skin wasn't relevant to the character and that Elba had the perfect soul for the role, ultimately validating the filmmaker's choice. The film featured more than 20 Stephen King Easter eggs. Arcel's movie is saturated with over 20 deliberate references and Easter eggs to the wider Stephen King literary universe. There's no denying that the movie's source material is the hub of King's entire body of work, the central force which connects his various novels and characters across different dimensions. Therefore, to honor this massive multiverse, the filmmakers decided to embed visual and spoken references throughout the film. It includes nods to The Shining, with the twins and the Overlook Hotel, The Shawshank Redemption, with the Rita Hayworth poster, Christine, with a red 1958 Plymouth Fury toy car, and It, with a Pennywise sign at an abandoned amusement park, amongst others. If you ask us, we think these references were included to assure die-hard fans that the film understood the epic scope of Stephen King's mythology. They served as a constant backdrop, confirming that the story of Roland Deschain was indeed the linchpin connecting 1,000 different literary worlds. Sony and producers almost considered replacing Nikolai Arcel with a more experienced director. Sony and the producers grew increasingly concerned with Arcel's initial cut of the film. Sony Pictures chief Tom Rothman and Media Rights Capital co-founder Moti Wizik felt Arcel's vision was too focused on the character drama and internal world building of Stephen King's novels, resulting in a film that was too slow for a major summer blockbuster. This lack of confidence led to massive studio intervention. The producers took control of the editing process, demanding significant reshoots and a substantially quicker pace. While Arcel ultimately retained his director credit, his original vision was largely overridden by the studio's desire to deliver a condensed, action-forward film with a catastrophically short 95-minute runtime. This struggle over the final cut is widely cited as the reason for the theatrical version's rushed and fragmented narrative. The movie had a runtime of only 95 minutes. The relatively short 95-minute runtime of The Dark Tower became a significant point of criticism because the film attempted to adapt a massive source material, at least 3,000 pages that make up the 8-novel series. According to Arcel, the original script was way too lean and tight. He had no intentions of cramming everything in there. Having said that, there are reports that also state that the movie was significantly trimmed after an initial edit, and it originally lasted more than 2.5 hours. In all probability, the film's unclear narrative structure was exacerbated by this compression. The movie was basically a sequel to the books and not an adaptation. The Dark Tower movie wasn't a straight adaptation of King's 8-novel series, rather it was intended to be a sequel. Because the film was set after the events of the first novel, fans who were hoping to witness their favorite sequences from the books were let down by this creative choice. Some aspects of the books were changed or omitted completely, since the screenwriters and director Nikolai Arcel framed it as a fresh cycle, Roland Deschain's journey. Additional expensive reshoots totaling $6 million were insufficient to save the movie. The $6 million in reshoots for The Dark Tower were a desperate last-minute attempt by Sony and the producers to salvage the film, but they ultimately failed due to the project's fundamental creative compromises. These expensive reshoots, which included more backstory about Roland and the Man in Black's relationship, were mandated after test screenings of director Nikolai Arcel's initial cut were poorly received. However, the extra footage couldn't fix the core problem: the difficulty of condensing an 8-book epic into a 95-minute film. The expensive reshoots only served to make the final product feel even more rushed, disjointed, and structurally fragmented, highlighting the severe creative struggles that plagued the film's production. The movie only made $113 million worldwide, despite its $66 million budget. The Dark Tower was a huge failure at the box office, making only $113.2 million worldwide in spite of its $66 million production budget. It opened to only $19.5 million in the US, which was much less than the $20 to $25 million that was expected. In all probability, Sony Pictures lost money on the movie when marketing costs were taken into account, and this stopped their plans for the planned multimedia franchise. The Dark Tower was initially intended to be the first part of a massive multimedia franchise. Well, Sony's original vision for the movie was quite grandiose. You see, they didn't just plan a movie, but an entire multimedia franchise. And not just any franchise, but one that would also include a TV series where Idris Elba would reprise his role as Roland Deschain. The movie was planned to be the first installment in this expanded universe, with the TV series filling in the backstory and exploring other aspects of King's mythology. Sadly, these plans were completely dashed by the flick's critical and commercial failure, making The Dark Tower a standalone letdown rather than the start of an epic story. Despite her action star status, Catherine Winnick was cast as Jake's mother. Catherine Winnick, popularly known for portraying the formidable warrior Lagertha in the historical drama TV series Vikings, was cast in the relatively small role of Laurie Chambers, Jake's mother. The portrayal of Laurie as a worried parent who doesn't trust her son's visions was a dramatic shift from Winnick's usual action roles. Considering the prestige of King's source material, Winnick's casting demonstrated the film's capacity to draw high-profile actors, even if it was only for supporting roles. Tom Taylor was only 14 years old when he was cast in the role of Jake Chambers. It was only after a worldwide casting search that Taylor was cast as Jake Chambers, and back then he was just 14 years old. Needless to say, Taylor didn't have much experience before he landed this major Hollywood role. His previous works included British historical drama TV series The Last Kingdom and psychological thriller TV series Dr. Foster. Matthew McConaughey turned down a key role in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in favor of this movie. Matthew McConaughey famously turned down the role of Ego the Living Planet, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, in favor of playing the antagonist in The Dark Tower. McConaughey stated that his decision was rooted in a desire to choose the path of greater creative risk and novelty. He felt the role offered to him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was that of a shoehorned villain, whereas the Man in Black presented a rather unique opportunity to play a character who was purely and unapologetically evil, with no psychological justification or need for redemption. Furthermore, he was also attracted to the idea of building a new original franchise based on King's beloved yet mostly unfilmed epic. McConaughey prioritized the chance to craft the iconic, unadulterated villainy of Walter Paddock, deeming it a more compelling artistic challenge despite the established commercial success of the MCU. Tom Hardy was considered for the role of the nefarious Man in Black before Matthew McConaughey. There's no denying that Tom Hardy's established status as an intense actor known for playing physically imposing and psychologically complex villains, such as Bane, did make him a rather strong candidate to embody the terrifying agent of chaos. Truth be told, had Hardy been cast, he certainly would have essayed the part with a much more overtly rugged and physically menacing presence. However, the role ultimately went to Matthew McConaughey, who brought a rather different interpretation, and the rest, as we all know, is history. Matthew McConaughey was very strongly attracted to his role, Walter Paddock. McConaughey specifically loved playing Walter Paddock because of the fact that the character represented pure, unadulterated evil with no psychological trauma or sympathetic excuse for his actions. With that being said, of course, McConaughey has essayed the role of villains before, but all those characters characteristically had understandable motivations. For instance, a tragic backstory, a wound from childhood, or some complex psychological justification to make the character more relatable. No wonder McConaughey was completely drawn to Walter Paddock's sheer lack of justification for his actions, thereby making him a rare example of pure malevolence in McConaughey's filmography. Abby Lee's character in the movie was completely reimagined. The character of Tirana, played by Abby Lee, was almost completely reimagined for the film, bearing very little to almost no resemblance to her novel counterpart. In King's original work, Tirana is an extremely minor character who appears as a grotesque, physically deformed creature serving the Crimson King. However, for the film adaptation, the character was completely transformed into a sexy and dangerous female lead with fake human skin and cold snake-like eyes. This massive change indicated how extensively the filmmakers altered Stephen King's source material for the screen adaptation. The film featured 3 characters from the final books of the series. Despite the film being ostensibly a short, simplified introduction to the series, the Dark Tower movie pulled several characters that don't really appear until much later in King's series. Allow us to elucidate with examples. Jackie Earle Haley plays Sayre, a character that doesn't appear until the 5th novel titled Wolves of the Kala. Next, we've already mentioned Abby Lee, who plays the role of Tirana, a minor villain from the 7th and final book. Lastly, Bran Kranz plays Pimley Prentice, another character not introduced until the 7th book. These character inclusions made it abundantly clear that the film was combining multiple books into a single film instead of adhering to the chronological order. The villain's hierarchy was entirely reorganized for the film. In case you didn't know this, the villain's chain of command in the movie was completely restructured. You see, in the book series, Pimley Prentice works for the Crimson King and not the Man in Black. However, the film recast Pimley as the right-hand man of the Man in Black, further implying that the filmmakers may have attempted to simplify or combine the intricate, complex villain hierarchy from the novels. This modification not only eliminated the Crimson King as a separate entity, but also consolidated the adversary roles under Walter's leadership. Jackie Earle Haley required CGI dots on his face for his villain transformation. The actor required the use of facial motion capture technology, including the application of CGI tracking dots on his face, for his brief but dramatic villain transformation in the movie. In fact, the tracking dots were necessary to digitally capture the nuance of Haley's facial expressions during the transformation sequence. Sayre is described as a menacing humanoid with distinctive vampiric features, requiring visual effects to transform Haley's appearance the monstrous villain fans expected from the source material. Dennis Haysbert appeared in flashback scenes as Roland's father. Dennis Haysbert appeared in short yet pivotal flashback sequences all throughout the movie as Roland's father and fallen gunslinger Stephen Deschain. While in the novels, Stephen doesn't appear until much later in the series, the film makes good use of the crucial flashback sequences to provide a backstory for Roland's motivation and his family's legacy as gunslingers. Now, the casting of Haysbert was a deliberate and effective choice by the filmmakers to instantly establish the necessary gravitas and history for Roland's lineage and add to this his duty to protect the Dark Tower. The majority of the film was shot in South Africa and not the American West. While the story of the Dark Tower spans from New York City to Roland's desolate midworld, the majority of this film was shot in South Africa, particularly in Cape Town and the Karoo region. In fact, the vast, arid, and untouched landscapes of the Karoo and the surrounding desert areas provided the perfect desolate backdrop for Roland's crumbling world. The production team also utilized Cedarburg Mountains and Tankwa Karoo National Park to represent the otherworldly midworld. Marvelous verdict! Well, that's all for today, and with this, we've finally come to the end of our video. Did any of these bits of Dark Tower trivia catch you off guard? Moreover, who here's a fan of the 2017 movie? We'd love to hear from you. Don't hesitate to hit us with your thoughts in the comments section, and stay tuned as we promise to be back with more exciting, marvelous content in the future. Until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.